mist rolled in off the Atlantic, curling around the rocky shores of Port Haven, Maine, like a lover's whisper. It was late October, and the air carried the sharp tang of salt and the faint decay of leaves piling along the cobblestone streets. The small coastal town, with its weathered clapboard houses and lobster traps stacked like forgotten sculptures, hummed with the quiet rhythm of a place that knew both hardship and heart. Streetlights flickered to life as dusk settled, their amber glow cutting through the fog, painting the world in soft, uncertain edges. 8-year-old Charlie Evans pedaled his rusty bike down Harbor Lane, the tires humming against the damp pavement. His backpack bounced, stuffed with library books about whales and shipwrecks, his latest obsession. His dark curls poked out from under a too-big Red Sox cap, and his sneakers, scuffed from climbing the pier's pilings, squeaked with every push. Charlie's world was small but vivid. Port Haven's diner, where his mom Emily poured coffee and traded gossip, the crumbling pier where he hunted for sea glass, and the endless churning ocean that whispered secrets he was too young to understand but old enough to chase. He's late again, Emily thought, glancing out the diner's fogged-up window. The neon sign, Harbor Glow Diner, buzzed faintly, casting a pinkish hue over the counter where she wiped down ketchup bottles. At 32, Emily Evans wore her exhaustion like a second skin, her auburn hair pulled into a messy bun, her apron stained with grease and hope. The diner was their lifeline, but the bills piled faster than the tips. She worried about Charlie, out there alone, his curiosity bigger than his caution. He's got my heart and his father's recklessness, she thought, a pang twisting her chest. His father was long gone, a memory she didn't let herself touch. Charlie slowed his bike near the edge of town where the streetlights grew sparse and the ocean's roar drowned out the gulls. That's when he saw her. A woman sitting on a bench beneath a flickering streetlight, her silhouette softened by the mist. She was maybe 40, her dark hair streaked with gray, pulled into a loose braid that rested on her shoulder. Her coat, a faded navy peacoat, hung loose over a frame too thin for its size. In her lap, she clutched a worn leather journal, her fingers tracing its edges like it was a lifeline. Her face was half-shadowed, but her eyes, catching the streetlight's glow, held something heavy. Grief, maybe, or a story too big for words. Charlie stopped, one foot on the ground, his bike wobbling. He wasn't supposed to talk to strangers, but this woman didn't feel like one. Not exactly. She looked like someone the town had forgotten, or maybe someone who'd chosen to be forgotten. His voice, small but clear, cut through the quiet. "Why are you alone?" The woman flinched, her head snapping up. For a moment, her eyes locked on his, wide and startled, like a deer caught in headlights. Then her expression softened, a faint smile tugging at her lips, though it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm not sure I am, now that you're here," she said, her voice low, like the tide pulling back from the shore. Charlie tilted his head, studying her. "You look sad. Are you lost?" She laughed softly, a sound like dry leaves rustling. "Not lost, just sitting, thinking." She glanced at the journal, her fingers tightening around it. "What's your name, kid?" "Charlie. Charlie Evans. I live at the diner with my mom. What's yours?" She hesitated, as if her name was a secret she'd forgotten how to share. "Claire," she said finally. "Just Claire." Charlie nodded, like that was enough. He pointed at her journal. "What's that? You writing a book?" Claire's smile faded, her thumb brushing the journal's cracked leather. "Something like that. Stories, sketches, things I don't want to forget." Charlie's eyes lit up. "Can I see? I like stories, especially about the ocean." She shook her head, tucking the journal closer. "Not yet. Maybe someday." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and seaweed. Charlie shivered, his thin jacket no match for the autumn chill. Claire noticed, her brow furrowing. "Shouldn't you be home, Charlie?" "It's getting dark. I'm going to the diner. Mom's waiting. You want to come? We got pie. Apple's the best." Claire's gaze drifted to the ocean, its waves crashing against the rocks beyond the street. For a moment she seemed far away, lost in a memory that made her shoulders tense. Then she looked back at Charlie, his earnest face glowing under the streetlight. "Pie sounds nice," she said quietly, "but I don't want to bother your mom." "You won't. Mom likes people. She says the diner's for everybody." Claire stood, slipping the journal into her coat pocket. She moved slowly, like someone testing unsteady ground. "Lead the way, then, Charlie Evans." The Harbor Glow Diner sat at the heart of Port Haven, its windows steaming from the heat of the grill and the chatter of locals. Fishermen in flannel swapped stories over coffee, their voices a low hum against the clink of dishes. Emily was behind the counter, pouring decaf for Old Man Pritchard, when the bell above the door jingled. Charlie burst in, his cheeks flushed from the cold, trailed by a woman Emily didn't recognize. "Mom, this is Claire. I found her by the streetlight, and she's got a book with ocean stuff in it." Charlie's voice carried over the diner's hum, drawing curious glances from the regulars. Emily's smile froze as she took in Claire, her worn coat, the shadows under her eyes, the way her hands stayed close to her pockets, guarding something. Who is she? Emily thought, her maternal instincts prickling, but Charlie's grin, so rare these days, softened her caution. She wiped her hands on her apron and stepped around the counter. "Hi, Claire. I'm Emily. Welcome to the Harbor Glow." Her voice was warm but cautious, small-town hospitality tempered by a mother's wariness. "Charlie says you're new around here?" Claire shifted, her eyes flicking to the floor before meeting Emily's. "Just passing through. Your son's persistent." She glanced at Charlie, who was already climbing onto a stool, swinging his legs. "He mentioned pie." Emily laughed, the sound easing the tension in her shoulders. "That he did. Apple's his favorite. On the house, if you don't mind a kid's chatter." Claire nodded, settling onto a stool a few seats from Charlie. "I don't mind." As Emily slid a slice of pie across the counter, Charlie leaned forward, his eyes on Claire's coat pocket. "You gonna show me your book now? You said it's got ocean stuff. I love whales. Did you ever see one?" Claire's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "I've seen whales," she said softly. "Humpbacks, mostly. Off the coast, years ago. They sing, you know. Sounds like the world's holding its breath." Charlie's eyes widened. "You heard them for real? Were you on a boat?" "Something like that." Claire's voice grew distant, her gaze drifting to the window, where the mist pressed against the glass. The boat, the storm, the screams. She pushed the memory down, focusing on the pie, its warmth a small anchor. Emily watched them, her hands busy wiping the counter but her mind racing. She's not just a drifter. There's something she's not saying. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "You got a place to stay, Claire? It's cold out there tonight." Claire stiffened, her fork clinking against the plate. "I'm fine. Got a spot at the motel by the pier." Emily nodded, unconvinced but unwilling to push. "Well, you're welcome here anytime. Diners open late." Charlie piped up, oblivious to the undercurrent. "Claire, you gotta come to the pier tomorrow. I'll show you where I find sea glass. It's the best spot in Port Haven." Claire's smile was tight, her eyes flickering with something Emily couldn't read. Fear, maybe, or regret. "Maybe, Charlie. We'll see." The diner's warmth wrapped around them, a fragile bubble against the gathering mist outside. But as Claire took another bite of pie, her journal heavy in her pocket, she felt the weight of Charlie's question linger. "Why are you alone?" She didn't have an answer. Not yet. But for the first time in years, she wondered if she might find one in this small, stubborn town. The next morning, Port Haven woke to a sky heavy with clouds, the kind that promised rain but hadn't yet decided when. Charlie was up before Emily, already at the kitchen table with his library books, sketching a humpback whale with a stubby pencil. Emily shuffled in, her hair still damp from a rushed shower, her mind on the diner's ledger. The numbers didn't add up, never did, but she pushed the thought aside, ruffling Charlie's hair. "You're up early, kiddo? Dreaming of whales again?" "Claire saw them, Mom. She heard them sing. Can she come to the pier today, please?" Emily sighed, pouring coffee into a chipped mug. "Charlie, she seems nice, but we don't know her. Let's give her some space, okay?" Charlie frowned, his pencil pausing. "She's not scary. She's just sad, like she lost something." Emily's heart twisted. He's too young to see that kind of pain. But she knew he was right. Claire carried something heavy, something that made Emily's own struggles, bills, late nights, the fear of losing the diner, feel both sharper and smaller. "We'll see her around, I'm sure. Now eat your cereal. You've got school." At the diner, the day passed in a blur of coffee refills and small-town gossip. The regulars talked about the weather, a nor'easter brewing out at sea, maybe hitting in a few days, and the pier, its pilings creaking under years of neglect. Emily listened, her stomach nodding. The pier was Charlie's place, where he'd spend hours hunting sea glass or watching the lobster boats. If it went, so would a piece of his world. Claire didn't show up that day or the next. Charlie kept asking, his disappointment growing with each empty stool at the counter. Emily told herself it was for the best. Strangers came and went in Port Haven. But late on the third night, as she locked up the diner, she saw a figure by the pier, silhouetted against the moonlit waves. Claire, her coat flapping in the wind, stood at the edge, staring into the water like it might swallow her whole. Emily hesitated, then called out, "Claire? You okay out there?" Claire turned, her face pale in the moonlight. "Just thinking." The ocean's loud tonight. Emily stepped closer, the gravel crunching under her boots. Charlie's been asking for you. He wants to show you his sea glass spot. Claire's laugh was brittle. He's a good kid. Reminds me of someone I used to know. Emily tilted her head, searching Claire's face. You've got a story, don't you? Something that brought you here. Claire's hand went to her pocket, where the journal rested. Everyone's got a story. Doesn't mean it's worth telling. Emily nodded, letting the silence settle. Well, if you change your mind, the diner's open late, and Charlie's got a million questions for you. Claire looked back at the ocean, its waves glinting like broken glass. A million questions. She wasn't sure she had answers, but Charlie's voice, "Why are you alone?" echoed in her mind, pulling at something she'd buried deep. Maybe, just maybe, Port Haven wasn't just another stop on her endless road. The air in Port Haven grew heavier as the nor'easter loomed, its threat whispering through the town like a ghost story. The sky hung low, gray as slate, and the Atlantic churned with a restless hunger, waves slamming against the rocky shore. In the Harbor Glow diner, the regulars swapped predictions. Some said the storm would fizzle out, others swore it'd tear the pier apart. Emily Evans, wiping down tables after the lunch rush, felt the weight of their words settle in her chest. The pier was more than wood and nails. It was Charlie's sanctuary, where he'd sit for hours, clutching sea glass like tiny pieces of the ocean's heart. Losing it would break something in him, and Emily wasn't sure she could fix that. Charlie, meanwhile, was at school, his nose buried in a book about marine life during recess. His teacher, Mrs. Callahan, had caught him sketching a manta ray in the margins of his math notebook, his pencil strokes confident despite the smudges. "Charlie, you're going to be a scientist one day," she'd said, half teasing. Charlie had grinned, but his thoughts were on Claire. She's seen whales, real ones. He hadn't seen her since that night at the diner, 3 days ago, and her absence gnawed at him. He'd told his best friend Tommy about her journal, about the ocean stories she carried. "She's like a pirate but sad," he'd said, and Tommy had nodded, wide-eyed, imagining treasure maps. That evening, as the diner's neon sign flickered against the gathering dusk, Claire appeared. The bell jingled, and there she was, her peacoat damp from the mist, her journal tucked under her arm. The regulars glanced up, then back to their coffee. Strangers weren't new in Port Haven, but Claire's quiet intensity drew eyes. Emily caught Charlie's grin before he even spoke. "Claire, you came back. Want to see my sea glass? I got a blue one yesterday." Charlie slid off his stool, nearly knocking over his milkshake. Claire's smile was small but genuine, softening the lines around her eyes. "Blue's rare. You must be good at hunting." She slid onto a stool, her movements careful, like she was still deciding whether to stay. Emily approached, her apron smudged with flour from baking. "Good to see you, Claire. Coffee? Or more pie?" Her tone was warm, but her eyes searched Claire's face, looking for cracks in the stranger's guarded calm. "Coffee's fine. Black." Claire's voice was steady, but her fingers brushed the journal. A nervous tick, Emily noticed. She's holding on to that thing like it's her whole world. As Emily poured the coffee, Charlie leaned closer, his elbows on the counter. "Did you bring your book? You said it's got sketches. Can I see one? Just one?" Claire hesitated, her gaze flicking to Emily, then back to Charlie. "All right, one." She opened the journal, its pages worn and yellowed, and flipped to a sketch of a jellyfish, its tendrils flowing like ink spilled underwater. The detail was meticulous, each line precise, almost reverent. Beside it, in tight, slanted handwriting, was a note. "Gulf of Maine, 2018. They glow in the dark like ghosts." Charlie's eyes widened. "You drew that? It's like, alive? Were you a scientist or something?" Claire's hand froze, her coffee mug halfway to her lips. "Something like that," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "A scientist, a failure, a ghost." She closed the journal, the snap of leather loud in the diner's hum. Emily watched the exchange, her maternal instincts warring with curiosity. Charlie's excitement was infectious, but Claire's evasiveness stirred unease. Who carries a journal like that and clams up over a kid's question? She leaned against the counter, her voice casual but probing. "You've got a gift, Claire? That sketch could be in a museum. You ever work with the ocean for real?" Claire's eyes met Emily's, and for a moment something raw flickered there. "Grief? Sharp and unguarded. I used to. Studied marine life, tracked migrations, currents, but that was another life." Charlie piped up, oblivious to the tension. "You gotta come to the pier with me. I'll show you where the crabs hide. Maybe you'll draw them." Claire's smile was strained, her gaze drifting to the window, where the ocean loomed beyond the glass. The pier's Not my place, Charlie, but I'll think about it. Over the next few days, Claire became a quiet fixture at the diner. She'd show up after the dinner rush, nursing a coffee, sketching in her journal while Charlie peppered her with questions. Emily watched, torn between gratitude for the light in Charlie's eyes and a growing unease. Claire was kind, patient even, but her silences were heavy, her answers vague. She's running from something, Emily thought, scrubbing plates late one night, but Charlie trusts her, and I trust him. One evening, as the wind howled outside, rattling the diner's windows, Emily found something that shifted the ground beneath her. She was cleaning the lost and found box, full of forgotten scarves and teas, when a faded news clipping slipped out from under a sweater. The headline, yellowed but stark, read, "Marine Research Team Lost in Atlantic Storm. Sole Survivor Found." Below it, a grainy photo showed a younger Claire, her face hollow, standing on a dock with a blanket around her shoulders. The article mentioned a research vessel, the Aurora, caught in a freak storm off the Maine coast 5 years ago. 4 crew members died. Claire, the lead biologist, was the only one pulled from the wreckage. Emily's breath caught. She didn't just study the ocean, she lost everything to it. She tucked the clipping into her pocket, her mind racing. Why didn't she tell us? Is she hiding here? That night, Claire arrived later than usual, her coat soaked from the rain. Charlie was already at the counter, showing her a piece of green sea glass. "It's like an emerald, right? Found it by the pier today." Claire nodded, her smile faint. "It's beautiful, Charlie, like the ocean kept it safe just for you." Emily watched them, the clipping burning a hole in her pocket. She wanted to trust Claire, wanted to believe the warmth in her eyes when she looked at Charlie. But doubt gnawed at her. What if she's not safe? What if she's broken in ways we can't handle? She waited until Charlie ran to the bathroom, then slid onto the stool beside Claire. "Found something today," she said, her voice low. She pulled out the clipping, smoothing it on the counter. "This you?" Claire's face drained of color, her hand tightening around her journal. "Where'd you get that?" "Lost and found. Someone must have left it." "Claire, what happened out there?" Claire's eyes darted to the window, the ocean a black void beyond. "It's not a story for a diner, Emily. Not for Charlie. He trusts you. I need to know if I can." Emily's voice was steady, but her heart pounded. "I can't lose him. Not to someone carrying that kind of pain." Claire swallowed, her fingers tracing the journal's edge. "I was a marine biologist. We were studying whale migrations. A storm hit, faster than we expected. I couldn't save them." Her voice cracked, barely audible. "I've been running from it ever since." Emily's chest tightened. She saw the guilt in Claire's eyes, the kind that mirrored her own fears. Failing Charlie, losing the diner, coming up short. "You're not running now. You're here. With us." Claire looked away, her jaw tight. "I don't know how to stay, Emily. I don't know if I deserve to." Before Emily could respond, Charlie bounded back, holding a crayon drawing of a whale. "Claire, look, it's for you, so you won't forget the ocean." Claire took the drawing, her hands trembling. "Right, he sees me. Not the wreck I am," she forced a smile. "It's perfect, Charlie. I'll keep it safe." The nor'easter hit 2 days later, a beast of wind and rain that battered Port Haven's shores. The pier groaned under the onslaught, its pilings splintering as waves crashed over the boards. Charlie stood at the diner's window, his nose pressed to the glass, his voice small. "Mom, the pier's gonna break, isn't it?" Emily pulled him close, her heart aching. "We'll figure it out, kiddo. We always do." Claire was there too, her journal open to a sketch of the pier, its lines shaky as if drawn in a hurry. She'd been quieter since Emily's questions, but she hadn't left. Now she stared at the storm, her face pale. The sea, always the sea. Memories clawed at her. The Aurora's deck tilting, her crew's screams swallowed by the waves. She'd sworn never to face the ocean again. But Charlie's voice, his fear for the pier, tugged at her. "Claire, you know the ocean, right?" Charlie's eyes were wide, hopeful. "Can you help save the pier? You're smart like that." Claire's throat tightened. "He thinks I'm a hero. I'm anything but." She looked at Emily, who nodded, her expression a mix of trust and desperation. "We could use you, Claire, if you're willing." The wind howled, rattling the diner's windows. Claire's hand closed around her journal, the unsent letter inside burning against her heart. "I owe them. I owe myself." She stood, her voice steady despite the fear clawing her chest. "I'll try. For Charlie." Outside, the storm raged, and the pier's fate hung in the balance. Claire stepped into the rain, the ocean's roar calling her back to a past she couldn't escape. But this time, she wasn't alone. Charlie's hope, Emily's trust, and a small town's stubborn heart walked with her. The nor'easter tore through Port Haven with a fury that shook the soul of the town. Rain lashed the rocky coast, and the Atlantic roared, its waves clawing at the pier like a beast desperate to claim it. The air was thick with salt and fear, the sky a bruise of gray and black. At the Harbor Glow Diner, the windows rattled, and the neon sign flickered like a heartbeat struggling to hold on. Inside, Emily Evans gripped Charlie's hand, her eyes fixed on the pier through the storm's haze. The pilings were buckling, the boards splintering under the waves' relentless assault. It's not just wood, she thought. It's Charlie's world. Our home. Charlie pressed his face to the glass, his breath fogging the pain. It's breaking, Mom. The pier's breaking. His voice was small, trembling, but his eyes burned with a stubborn hope. He turned to Claire, who stood by the counter, her peacoat dripping from the rain, her journal clutched tight. Claire, you said you'd try. You can fix it, right? Claire's heart stuttered. The ocean's roar was deafening. Pulling her back to that night on the Aurora, the storm, the screams, the guilt that had chained her to silence. I couldn't save them. How can I save this? But Charlie's gaze, so trusting, anchored her. She glanced at Emily, whose nod was both plea and permission. I'll do what I can, Charlie, Claire said, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her chest. But I need you both to stay safe. Stay here. Emily's hand tightened on Charlie's. We're not letting you go out there alone. If the pier matters to Charlie, it matters to us all. Claire opened her mouth to protest, but the look in Emily's eyes, fierce, protective, yet open, stopped her. They're not my crew, they're more. She nodded, pulling her coat tighter. Then let's move. The pier won't wait. The storm was a living thing, its wind howling through Port Haven's streets, tearing at shingles and tossing debris. Claire led the way to the pier, Emily and Charlie close behind, their faces set against the rain. The town had begun to rally. Fishermen in slickers, shopkeepers, with ropes and tarps, all drawn by the pier's peril. It was Port Haven's heart, where kids fished, couples strolled, and old men told stories of the sea. Losing it was unthinkable. At the pier's edge, the damage was worse than Claire feared. A support piling had snapped, tilting the structure dangerously, and waves surged over the boards, threatening to pull it into the deep. Claire's stomach churned as she stared at the water, its black churn a mirror to her nightmares. I can't do this. Not again. But Charlie's hand brushed hers, his small fingers cold but firm. You know the sea, Claire. You're not scared, right? Terrified. She forced a smile. Not with you here, kid. She knelt, meeting his eyes. Stay with your mom, help the others. I need to check the pilings. Emily pulled Charlie back, her voice sharp. Claire, you're not going in there. The water's too rough. Claire stood, her gaze locked on the waves. I know what I'm doing. I studied currents, structures. If we don't stabilize that piling, the whole pier goes. She pulled a rope from a nearby fisherman, tying it around her waist. Tie this to something solid. If I go under, pull. Emily's face paled, but she nodded, looping the rope around a sturdy post. The townsfolk gathered, their faces grim but determined, passing tools and shouting over the wind. Claire took a breath, the salt stinging her lungs, and stepped into the churning water. The cold hit like a fist, stealing her breath, but she pushed forward, her hands finding the broken piling. Focus. Feel the current. You've done this before. Her training kicked in, muscle memory overriding fear. She wedged a metal brace against the piling, hammering it into place as waves crashed over her. On the pier, Charlie clutched Emily's hand, his eyes wide. She's brave, Mom. Like a superhero. Emily's throat tightened. Or someone who's got nothing left to lose. She joined the others, hauling ropes and boards, her diner-stained apron soaked but her resolve ironclad. The town worked as one, their shouts blending with the storm's roar, a chorus of defiance against the sea. Claire surfaced, gasping, her hands raw from the brace. The piling held, for now. She climbed back onto the pier, trembling but alive. Emily grabbed her arm, pulling her close. You're insane, you know that? Claire managed a shaky laugh. Maybe. But the pier's still standing. Charlie threw his arms around her, soaking her coat with his tears. You did it, Claire. You saved it. Claire knelt, hugging him back, her heart cracking open. Not yet, kid, but I'm trying. The storm still raged, but the pier held, and for the first time in years, Claire felt something like hope. A week later, Port Haven glowed under a crisp autumn sun, the storm's scars fading in the light. The pier, patched but proud, stood as a testament to the town's grit. The annual Harvest Festival arrived, transforming the waterfront with lanterns, food stalls, and music, a celebration of survival, of home. Emily had closed the diner early, setting up a booth with apple pies and hot cider, her smile brighter than it had been in months. Charlie darted through the crowd, a seashell necklace clutched in his hand, his eyes scanning for Claire. Claire stood at the pier's edge, her journal open, her fingers tracing an unsent letter. To Lily, my dearest friend's daughter, it began. I failed your mother. I couldn't bring her back, but I promised to live for her, to be better. She'd written it 100 times, never sent it, the guilt too heavy. But tonight, with the town's warmth around her, she felt ready, not to erase the past, but to carry it forward. Charlie found her, his grin wide. Claire, I made this for you. He held out the necklace, a single polished seashell strung on twine. It's from the pier, so you'll remember you're not alone. Claire's breath caught. She took the necklace, her fingers trembling as she tied it around her neck. It's perfect, Charlie. Thank you. Emily joined them, her eyes soft but searching. You sticking around, Claire? Port Haven's got a way of holding on to people. Claire looked at the pier, the sea, the town that had pulled her from her shadows. I think I might, if you'll have me. The festival's climax came as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and violet. The mayor called for a moment of thanks, and Claire, to her own surprise, stepped forward. She held her journal, her voice steady as she spoke to the crowd. I've been running a long time, from the sea, from myself, but a kid asked me a question. Why are you alone? And it made me stop. This town, this pier, you reminded me I don't have to be. She opened her journal, her hands steady now, and read the letter to Lily, her voice carrying over the crowd. I promised to live for her, for you, for this place, to be part of something bigger than my mistakes. She looked at Charlie and Emily, her eyes shining. To my new family. The crowd was silent, then erupted in applause, their cheers a warm wave washing over her. Charlie hugged her, Emily's arm around them both, and the pier glowed under the lanterns, a beacon of belonging. Months later, Port Haven hummed with new life. Claire stayed, renting a small room above the diner. Her days split between mentoring Charlie in marine science and helping Emily with the diner's books. The pier was rebuilt, stronger now, a community hub where kids played and fishermen swapped stories. Emily's ledger balanced barely, but enough to keep the diner's lights on. Charlie's sketches filled the walls, whales and jellyfish alongside Claire's, a testament to their shared dreams. Claire's journal, once a vault for her pain, now held new pages, sketches of Port Haven, notes on Charlie's questions, recipes from Emily's kitchen. The seashell necklace hung around her neck, a reminder of the boy who'd asked the question that changed everything. Why are you alone? She wasn't. Not anymore. As the sun set over the Atlantic, painting the pier in amber light, Claire stood with Charlie and Emily, watching the waves. The ocean was still vast, still wild, but it no longer felt like a threat. It was home, like Port Haven, like the family they'd built. And in the heart of small-town America, where questions bloomed like sea glass on the shore, they'd found the answers that led them to each other.